Defining leadership levels today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Mathieu. That's
Hey,
you, my friend. Hey. So we are continuing our not a series. It's not a series. I feel like we should explain that joke. We have done a couple of series in the past, and anytime we've said we're in the middle of a series, it's just not as popular. But if we do a series and we say it's not a series, people listen. So don't
we're
think
glad
of it
you're
as
here.
a series, but we're talking through leadership pipeline. As we explained last week, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it because it explains sort of the need for a leadership pipeline. I think it's really a compelling case that we make. But we explained last week that we really have two things that we do with churches. We focus on strategic envisioning, on revitalization, the key components, these pillars of church revitalization. And we also work with churches in leadership development, and they go hand in hand. I mean, we mentioned this last week, that really all the things we work on in strategic envisioning are dormant without leadership. Leadership animates the work that we do in strategic envisioning. And so last week we kind of made the case for why every church needs a leadership pipeline. And this week we're going to dive into the idea of having levels of leadership in the church. And every church does this to some extent. You've got board members and other lay leaders. You have staff and you've got volunteers. But even within those categories, we ought to have more differentiation in roles and responsibilities, that we can stratify leadership across all of our ministries and have some consistent language and some consistent standards, no matter what ministry we're talking about. So we're going to lay all that out for you in this episode.
Yeah. So while it is, we love it when churches do both processes. Either process can run standalone or even have a gap. A good case in point on that, Scott, is I did strategic envisioning with the church in Madrid, Spain in February. You're going back in September to do leadership pipeline with them. So,
yeah, that's right.
Sometimes, it's maybe more of a necessity in others. And of course, we would like to go, we would have shortened that gap if not for funding and timing. But you work with a ton of churches here in the States that did leadership pipeline with a gap, and sometimes they never even did the strategic envisioning process. They had like maybe done their own thing and they just wanted to do pipeline. More common, I think, that we do both services with them.
And back to back. So
back to back is
yeah.
often the case. Come out 1 month, do one, then do the other one, and then be working on implementation. So
implementing both things at the same time.
Yeah. I guess maybe we would call that the ideal, but
Sure.
But don't think, oh, I've never done their strategic envisioning process, I can't do pipeline. That's not the case. You absolutely could.
Right.
And if it's been a while, you could still do pipeline. So they're two important things in church health, and we'll be glad to help you with either one, no matter what the timing might look like for you.
Sure. All right. So let's dive into maybe let's go back. I think we talked about this in last week's episode and in more in depth than I want to go here. But I would like to recall to your memory Exodus 18:24, which let's see if I can still remember it.
To my memory or to everybody's memory?
To everyone's memory, yours as well.
Could be
everyone's.
Be either one.
Everyone's memory, which says, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy, and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And so we have in Exodus 18, again, I think it's verse 24. This leadership pipeline, and one component of it is competencies, which we're going to talk about next week. The other thing that we see in it is these levels of leadership. And we see 5 levels. So these are we're going to talk about 5 levels of leadership today. And I think that most churches, 99% of churches, 5 levels of leadership is sufficient. But we see these 5 levels actually in play in Exodus 18 as well. You might go, I only count 4. He says chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and tens. That's 4. Scott
Yes.
Ball, you don't know math. But you're not counting Moses and the elders.
Moses, yeah. We're at
Yeah.
the top.
So, yeah, right. So we would call that level 5 leadership. We're going to go through, we're going to break down all these levels, but just kind of going from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on the front end here as an overview. Level 5
Yeah.
being leading the organization or leading the whole group, which Moses and the elders do. And then you have level 4 leadership, which is focused on leading tribes in Moses's context, like chiefs of thousands, or in your context, maybe leading whole ministries or departments. And level 3 leadership, this is a chief of hundreds, or in your context in the ministry, might be leading smaller teams within a ministry. Level 2 leadership, this is the chiefs of 50s. And in the church context, this is like being a leader within a ministry. And then level 1 leadership, call this chiefs of tens. This is a leading self component where you're volunteering in a ministry, but you're not really leading other people. You're mainly leading yourself, and you're contributing to the ministry more than you are leading within the ministry. So we're going to break all of these down, but we see these 5 levels kind of enacted in Exodus 18, and we're emulating this biblical model in a contemporary context.
Lest you think we do not recognize Jesus as head of the church. Yes, he is on top of these levels. We're talking about people presently in human bodily form.
He transcends the levels.
That's right. Yes, we recognize Jesus as head of the church. He is above level 5.
Sure.
All
Fair
right.
enough. You know what? I've never gotten that pushback, but I'm glad you said it because I'm sure
someone might write an email in about that.
Some cheeky listener. We just need Jesus.
I see you cutting Jesus right out of the church over there. No.
All right. So as we move through these, well, maybe let's just talk about the need. Why have levels of leadership first?
Well, I think the case is made starting back in chapter 18 of Exodus. Also, again, the story was Moses was going to burn himself out. It's too much to do. So the necessity of having levels of leadership, I guess the necessity of having other leaders first is established. But I think you can kind of see where this is going. If you've ever had to deal with people or cats, you've got to have some kind of structure to organize things that are happening. So, there are people that have different gifting, that have different competencies, that have different experience. Not everybody is equipped to be at a certain level of leadership at any point in time. And so breaking that down into people with, smaller tasks or fewer tasks or lesser tasks, whatever it is, and then others that have increased abilities, experience, competency, to be able to lead people and then lead larger groups of people, is just a natural breakdown to make sense out of all this and to make things manageable. I don't know are we going to
think of it as like leadership triage.
Yeah.
If this team can handle this problem, they should have the authority and the ability and the permission to handle this challenge on their own without everything having to escalate all the way up. This isn't a way to try and abandon things and kind of just go, well, I shouldn't have to worry about that. I'm too high up in the pipeline. It isn't about that. It's about letting the people closest to the problem handle the problem in so long as they are equipped and empowered to do so.
Yep.
So, and it increases ownership. it decreases burnout and gives it gives steps for people to climb in their leadership journey so that you're not expecting someone to go from an usher to an elder, which is often what we have happen. We got a guy, he's, Jimmy, he's been here for 25 years. He's a good guy. Well, he's been a Sunday school teacher, but you know, we don't really know. We've had no opportunities to see Jimmy in action outside of a Sunday school classroom to know if he's actually qualified to be an elder. And this gives handles to grab onto to give someone like Jimmy or Joe or Jane or whoever it is opportunities to try out leadership opportunities before we escalate them to higher and higher levels of responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. No, we're also not saying that you would have to progress through every level to to become an elder in the church.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Or because not everybody is going to become like a staff member of something. It's so
right. I'd
there's
probably like to see
exceptions.
them a
There's
level 3.
exceptions. Yeah.
Probably would be looking at my level 3 leaders for the most part, but
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Right.
But
To
point well taken.
become perhaps a level 5 leader. So
Yeah.
you'll
Yep.
understand more of that as we go. That'll make more
So
sense.
I introduced the topics 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or the levels 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but we're actually going to go through them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll
All
start
right.
at the bottom.
Let's jump in. So level 1 leadership, as Scott mentioned, we consider this the level of simply leading self. This is a key thing, I think. Maybe this is maybe what is sometimes least expected by people when we start talking about leadership pipeline and levels of leadership, that serving in the church, we're using the term leader for that. That's surprising to a lot of people, because I think people immediately, when they hear the word leader, go to you're leading other people, you're in charge of things. And I think we're just kind of cracking that open and saying, no, let's call these people leaders, because they've stepped out of the shadows. They're no longer a consumer. They're an active participant in the ministry of the church. And I think it deserves the title leader. And they should be recognized as such. Now, they don't have a lot of responsibility. This is very, very entry level position in leading self. Though, you know what, a lot of people would agree, though, maybe in our current culture, where there really is a lack of leaders, I think, right now in the world in general. People are very consumeristic. And so to step up and go, all right, I'm going to take a little bit of charge of this. I'm going to be responsible for myself to participate in the work of the ministry. All we're asking of these people, really, can you show up on time? Can you understand some basic instructions? And can we depend on you to be here and remain in place to accomplish this during the time that we need you? It doesn't go terribly much further than that, right, Scott?
No. So level 1 leadership is taking the responsibility to lead yourself. So yes, can I wake up on time? Can I get to the church on time? Can I respond to emails and text messages? If you're a church that's using some sort of volunteer scheduling software like Planning Center, can I respond to a Planning Center request and just hit that confirm or hit that decline? Just letting someone know. Or if you're going to be late, or if you can't, you hit accept before, and you can't be there, can you help try to replace yourself, or at least give enough time to the leader to be able to give them time to find a replacement? Those very basic things. And you might go, that's not asking much, but
yeah.
The number one of the funniest things is when we have this conversation, a lot of our staff that I work with, when I work with a staff, they'll laugh and go, well, they'll always kind of crack a joke. Hey, there's someone sitting on the staff that needs to work on this too. And we laugh about it because it's true. These really fundamental things, even our higher level leaders sometimes need to be reminded. Me too. I need to, right. When you get the Planning Center thing, don't sit on it for a few days. I've been guilty of that. Respond quickly. So, take ownership, take some responsibility, execute some tasks. The key here, AJ, is that the bar should be so low that just about anybody qualifies to be a level 1 leader. Only someone who you really don't trust or is for some other reason disqualified. For example, they can't pass a background check or something like that. There may be reasons why someone would be disqualified even from this level. but it should almost be difficult to not be able to be a level one leader.
Yeah.
So maybe could you give us some examples of some roles that might commonly fit? Um, maybe this is, hold on, before you do that, let me mention, as we talk about these levels of leadership, AJ, this is language we're going to use, or categories, I should say, that we're going to use across all ministries. So you would have different opportunities in different ministries. Some of them will be level one opportunities, some will be level two opportunities. And it's possible for you to have a ministry that doesn't have any level one opportunities, but I would encourage you to have some level one entry point position for every general area of ministry. So, for example, in a small group ministry, there's probably not a level one opportunity. We'll talk about that in a minute. But where in the discipleship ministry category or community life ministry category could there be some level one opportunity? Well, maybe it's as a host, or maybe it's as, I don't know, as a apprentice teacher, something where there's not the burden of responsibility, but it's an entry point. So if someone is passionate about that area of ministry, there's an entry point for them. So every ministry area should have at least one entry point for the people who are passionate about that area. So what are some examples, more common examples of
Common example is going to be a lot of our frontline first impressions folks on Sunday
yeah,
morning, door greeters, parking lot, maybe your welcome center, ushers. Yeah.
coffee,
Yep.
the folks who sit in the AV booth in the back pressing next on the
Yep.
slides.
Yep. That's a good one. Yeah.
Um, any of those kinds of chances. Security, potentially, security, maybe or maybe not. Um, I mean, I think security is generally a level. This is a good time to mention this. Security team, you can have a level one opportunity that has some additional requirements on it. So, for example, being on the security team is a level one level type of responsibility. But in order to serve on that team, not only do you need to meet the level one requirements, you may also have to pass a background check or have to go through some safety training or have to go through, there may be additional expectations on you in order to serve in that role.
Yeah.
But the function itself is level one. It's
Yeah.
relative. Does that make sense?
You can see how that bar is going to be a little bit higher because you may be called on to respond to a situation. That's your entire job, is being prepared to respond to a situation
Right.
that handing out programs would never need.
Correct.
So yeah,
And that's okay, but as a category of
the level that it's at,
opportunity,
you're not responsible for other people in that
no.
role and
You're
leading
not
those people.
teaching, you're
Yeah.
not communicating, you're not doing the things we're about to talk about level two.
Yeah.
It's really a level one role, but you can have a level one role that still has specific expectations or requirements associated with that specific job. So
Right. Yeah.
some extra training. Another good example of this would be you could be a teacher helper in children's ministry. Like you're just, that's level one opportunity. You're not teaching the class, but you are just a classroom helper. Well, you still are probably going to have to pass that background. You are definitely going to have to pass that background check. You might also have to go through some safe space training
Yeah.
so that you know what your duties are for mandatory reporting. So there are additional expectations on top of you, even though the responsibility itself is level one.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me also point out here too, we're using the terms level one, level two, level three. This
Oh
is
yeah,
behind the scenes stuff. This is building the structure
right.
itself. This is not publicly how you would speak of the levels of leadership in your church.
Yeah. Call
Nobody
it
wants
team
to.
member.
Yeah. What number level are you?
Yeah, what number are you? Team member maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
You'll
Uh,
pick your own language. Some churches are really creative and come up with some odd stuff.
yeah. So these are placeholder terms just so that it's super clear about what we're talking about. And when we're working with the church, building this out, we'd use this. But yeah, it wouldn't be your public facing descriptions that you would be using.
Okay, so just to recap, because we've kind of said a lot in level one, just some foundational things. So level one is leading self leadership. Can I wake up on time? Can I respond to communication on time? Can I follow through on simple tasks? Common examples are going to be greeters, ushers, but they could also be more complicated things like classroom helper or security team. And it's okay to have some additional expectations layered on top of the general level one responsibilities. And that will be true all along the way. You may have some things that we call them role competencies. They're specific to the role rather than specific to the level. Okay, let's move on to level two leaders. So level two leaders are leading others, and not leading other leaders, but leading people within the congregation in some way, shape, or form. So this is a transition from self-leadership. I'm really only responsible for myself, and the thing that I value is my contribution to the ministry. Like I feel good, like, hey, I pitched in. To now I'm maybe developing some sort of a skill or passion that is building up the body in a very specific way. So I'm building up other people in the congregation to a better knowledge and understanding of who Jesus is. And this can take a variety of forms. So let's just talk through, rather than talking about it in the abstract, let's talk about it in the particular. A small group leader. This is a person who isn't just leading themselves, they are leading a small group to understand scripture better. Or someone on the worship team is leading other people into worshiping Jesus. Or a Sunday school teacher for children's ministry. They are leading children to know who Jesus is and to understand scripture and to learn what it means to be saved. All of these things. They are leading people in the congregation in a particular way, aligned with a skill or passion that they have.
Yeah.
And this is distinct and different from a level one leader who maybe has some passion for that area, but it's a pretty low responsibility gig. And we're maybe even from the church's perspective, we're just trying to get to know them, make sure we trust them, and kind of vet them a little bit before we let them loose on
Yeah. Yeah.
on leading other people in some way.
Yeah. So yeah,
So
so when we say level two leadership, leading others, we don't mean leading level one people. We mean lead
no,
members of the church in a way
correct.
that is necessary for the ministry. Yeah.
That's right. So we'll talk in a minute about level three leaders, which is level one leaders and level two leaders both would report to a level three. So this isn't a hierarchical thing where ones report to twos and twos report to threes. Ones and twos both report to a level three leader who is a manager of a team. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's not get sidetracked. But I just want you to understand you might have let's talk about a children's ministry classroom. In a children's ministry classroom, we might have a classroom helper. That's a level one responsibility. And we might have a classroom teacher. That's a level two responsibility. They may work together. They're kind of sharing the leadership of the classroom and so on. And level ones have the responsibility of maybe helping to facilitate a small group or helping with craft or helping with crowd control. But level twos are kind of taking ownership of the whole classroom. They're teaching the lesson. They are making sure that things stay on the rails. If a kid has a question about baptism or what does communion mean, they're the ones who are taking over that. So they have more leadership in that environment than a level one does. But if there's a conflict between the two of them, or there's some sort of communication that needs to happen, they would report to their coordinator, who is a level three leader.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They wouldn't, the level two wouldn't be like, I'm the boss in here. You listen. That would
Yeah.
be a situation where they'd go, okay, we're not getting along. There's a conflict. We need to go to the person we report to help us sort this out.
Yeah, yeah. So years ago, I was a communion server in our church, and the way we would do communion was we would have 5, 6 people at the front. We had some kneelers that people would come up to, and lines would form. People would come up for communion. That would be a level 2 position. I was leading people in taking of the elements, in prayer with them, and explaining the elements. Level
Sure.
1 person would have prepared the elements for
Would have
communion that
prepared the
day.
communion. Yeah.
If they didn't know how many juice cups to put in there, they would not have come to me and asked me that. They
No.
would have come to the person that coordinated
The
all of the communion
communion
servers.
coordinator.
Yep.
Right. And that person is the one who scheduled when AJ was supposed to be up front, and they scheduled who was supposed to prepare the elements on a
There you go.
particular week and so on. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very good practical example of the difference, um, and why they don't really interact that way. So
Yeah.
so just to clarify, talking about level twos, they at this level they need to have some communication skill, the ability not just to respond to communication, but to be able to communicate truth in some way,
Yep.
particularly within whatever realm or ministry type they serve in. So yeah, if you're up there and you're supposed to be praying for people, you should know how to do that. you know, and you should know how to be empathetic with someone, and how do I deal with a crisis, and when do I need to escalate this? If someone is saying, hey, I'm struggling with this thing, when is this something that I can just pray for this person, and when is this something I need to take to an elder or to a pastor or to someone else in charge?
Yeah.
All of those kinds of things. It's a higher level responsibility and a higher level skill set than what we're looking at in level one. Although it's still, a relatively speaking, not a high pressure situation.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, AJ, about 80%, maybe 85% of all volunteer positions in a church are level two and level one responsibilities.
Yeah.
Um, what Some other things to mention here. It's important to distinguish between the two. So you might be going, well, if they're kind of similar, why not just think of them all the same? Because they're not the same. There is a difference in kind when it comes to the level of competency necessary to serve in them. The other thing is, it's a different an investment that the church is making in their development. So once you enter that level two level of leadership, the church ought to take a more proactive involvement in developing that leader.
Mm.
So more accountability, more coaching, more development. Whereas level one leaders, were not necessarily putting that same level of investment in them until they take their next step and show some commitment.
Yeah.
Um, so that way we're not spreading ourselves too thin. So that would be another key differentiator between level one and level two, is the amount of development that the church is investing into that leader.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. But let's move on to level three,
Yeah,
and we can, as we go, I think when we start talking about the practical examples, I think it'll help kind of bring everything together.
sure.
Level three leaders actually are now leading other people. As you mentioned, level ones and level twos are going to report to a level three leader. And so we've definitely taken the responsibility up a notch at this point,
Mhm.
in making sure that people are going to be where they need to be on a particular
Right,
day and time.
right.
So at this leading leaders level, there's going to be probably some time coordination happening, and making sure that the right people are in the right place at the right time on whatever day week, Sunday and other days. Um, and so we're also adding in this coaching element at this stage, right, Scott?
That's right.
We've
So
we've got to take on some responsibility for help, as you just mentioned, for bringing people up, for helping them to mature in this position.
yeah, that's right. So level three responsibilities are characterized by scheduling, coaching, and evaluating. These are they are management responsibilities. One thing I want to mention here and to emphasize is that level three leaders are always volunteers. So a mistake that I see some larger churches or well-funded churches, sometimes they're
Mm.
not always large, but they have a lot of money,
Yeah,
is they have a tendency to hire this level out,
yeah,
where they go, oh, we've got a part-time such and such
coordinator.
coordinator,
Yeah,
and I'll go, that doesn't need to be paid. You could get a volunteer to do that. And the response will be, well, but they oversee X, Y, Z thing. And I go, well, maybe you've put too much on that one role. So it could still be volunteer, but rather than it being one person, we can split this into 2 volunteer positions. So this brings up a great point. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, AJ, here in a podcast, but one of the key components to figuring out how many level 3 leaders do we need and how big should their team be is in understanding span of control. So, as a general rule, no one person should have to oversee more than 8 people. So, if there's more than 8 people on a team, then that team is too large. There's an exception to the rule. The exception to the rule is if that team is largely made up of level 1 roles, then that span of control can be much larger because the only thing I'm doing with them primarily is sending regular communication and scheduling them. So if I'm the greeter coordinator, which would be a level 3 position, all I'm doing with those greeters for the most part is passing along updates. Maybe I'm doing a training once a quarter or a couple times a year on the basics of being a greeter. I'm onboarding new people, but for the most part, I'm just setting the schedule. These are the weeks that you're going to be a greeter, and here's the spot where you're supposed
Sending
to
the
stand.
planning center requests.
Planning those planning center requests. I'm not coaching them up, coaching them up. I'm not meeting with my greeters one-on-one and like, I'm really investing in you. Like that's not what I'm doing. I can only have that kind of a relationship, or I should only have that kind of a relationship with 8 people. If I go more than that, it's too many. So, level 3 leaders manage a team of volunteers. That is their responsibility. That looks like scheduling, that looks like coaching, that looks like evaluating. Now, the mistake that gets made, AJ, in this level, in terms of elevating people, is sometimes we take our most competent level 2 leader and want to move them into level 3 and go, well, they're really excelling as a small group leader. I bet I can put them as a small group coordinator and have them oversee a bunch of small groups. And that's not always the case because it's a different kind of job. Coordinating small groups isn't the same as leading a small group.
Yeah.
And if the thing that person really enjoys about being a small group leader is that small group interaction, they may languish as a small group coordinator because, while they might be involved in a small group, if they're doing their job well, they should be checking in on all those different small groups, saying how they're going, how healthy, what's the interaction like, and just kind of pop in. And someone who loves being a small group leader would probably hate that. So you're trying to identify people who have a management skill or can kind of develop those skills, and they're good at they enjoy developing people more than they do kind of that direct teaching interaction and so on.
Yeah. So when our life groups, our church is growing. We have 6 life groups. We got 7 life groups, 8 life groups. We're going to launch 2 more life groups this year. We need to be thinking, okay, our life group coordinator, our level 3 leader, our life group coordinator, we
Probably if you're going to have 10, you probably
need
need
a
2.
second life group coordinator. So now, okay, well, maybe we've got half our people are on the south side of the city, half are on the north side. So maybe we have a south side life group coordinator and a north side life group coordinator.
Could do it that way.
We can build it out like that. Yep.
You could do it that way. There's any number of ways you could do it.
Sure,
You could say, well, we've got 4 of these are women's groups. So we're going to have a women's life group coordinator, and then we're going to have, all other types, a coordinator.
There's only one other type besides women, Scott. That would be the men. So
no, I just meant like, I hear you. I was not thinking that. I was thinking like couples.
Oh, okay. Not all the other types of genders.
No, heavens no.
Types of life groups.
We talked about that a couple weeks ago on the podcast. No, I'm saying different types of life groups could be couples, could be men's, could be
Words matter. We got to be clear.
I'm glad you asked for clarification, lest anyone think I think there's more than 2 kinds of genders out there.
Yeah, you got women, and then you got all those others.
All those others. No. I'm glad
All
you asked
right.
for clarification. That was good.
Level 4 leaders. We're leading departments at this point, and you may have guessed it. Yes, we're going to be over the level 3 coordinators, and we're in this bigger role here. We've
Mhm.
got we have greater, obviously greater management responsibilities now. However, the number of people that are reporting to us may have gone down at this level. Depends on the organization.
Mm.
Um, but especially, if you were, I guess, if you were a level 3 life group coordinator and you had 8 life groups underneath you, maybe at this point you've got 2 life group coordinators and maybe something else in your area of responsibility. So your org chart may differ. Um,
Yeah.
but we're at this level, frequently, Scott, this would be staff level, paid staff level, could be unpaid, but we're talking
Yeah.
staff level people.
Yeah, that's the thing to mention here. This is, for all intents and purposes, in a 5 level structure. This is the staff level, and I don't care if it's paid.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's part-time or full-time. If I'm considering you a staff position, you're in this level. And if you've got a responsibility that as we start to look at it, we go, yeah, but they don't really oversee a team, then I'm probably going, then maybe maybe this should be a volunteer role. Maybe this would be a good place to interject some exceptions to rules. There are always exceptions to rules. I feel like I should mention them. Admin staff, um, so they, whether they're like assistants or receptionists or people like that, I like to say they run parallel to the pipeline. They extend the capacity of ministry leaders.
Yeah,
They
that's a good way
handle
of saying it. Yeah.
So they handle tasks and responsibilities that otherwise the ministry staff would have to take on. And so whether we're talking about a bookkeeper or a financial secretary or a maintenance worker or whatever that might be, those are people who are doing tasks that are very important to the running of the church, but they're not running a ministry team. They're not organized, generally speaking, they're not organizing a ministry team. If they are organizing a ministry team, then we need to loop them into the pipeline structure. If they're not, then we run them parallel to the pipeline structure and say, okay, these are folks who are support staff that are extending the capacity of the ministry staff. So I think it's important to mention that. Um, the other thing that is kind of a weird facet in the pipeline structure would be, well, what about my committees? I've got a finance team, a personnel team. I've got uh, a missions team. Where does that fit in the pipeline? It's a good question. Um, most of those are level 2 functions. But whereas we don't want people loading up on level 2 responsibilities, if you sit on a team that is largely deliberative, like personnel or finance or missions, then that does not eat up your responsibility and you're not coaching those people in the same way you are in an active ministry role. So if it's a deliberative group, like a committee, it it functions slightly, it's mapped out on the pipeline, but it functions slightly differently. So there's some couple of weird exceptions to the pipeline rules
Yeah.
that
Okay.
always come up as questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Y'all are getting some good meat in this episode.
Yeah, some more important aspects of the level 4 leader. They are actively participating in vision casting in the church, not necessarily the development of the vision, but on the communication of the vision and working it out so that things actually get done in pursuit of the vision. Remember, we're talking 5 levels of leadership in this outline. There is a possibility for a 6th level, and we could probably tag that in here at the end. But this is the next level down from the very top, which we're talking pastoral positions, elders of the church, the chief vision developers and vision casters. But now at this staff level, this is where everything that they're dreaming of for the church, and that needs to happen is coming first now through these staff people. So
Yeah.
the strategic plans for the church are getting executed here first at the staff level and then down through those teams beneath them. Managing resources is happening at the staff level. These are people that are going to be responsible for budget areas of the church. So when a amount of money has been decided in a particular area, it's the staff level people in most cases that are being able to manage money and like, okay, we know what we have to get done. We've allocated this much for it. It's going to happen, this week, this month, this time of the year.
Mhm.
And then problem solving that is coming from the downline up. Issues that just come up, dealing with personality problems or people that missed times that they were supposed to be there. Somebody didn't show up, and we've got to be able to solve some of these problems. So obviously this is a higher area of responsibility that somebody is good at managing things as they come up and applying the right resources and options to particular situations.
A couple of things I like to say about this level of leadership. First, level 4 leaders, so staff people who are leading departments, ought to be really good at a few things. They should be good at forecasting problems. So what's coming down the pike that we haven't been thinking about? So they shouldn't just be reacting to problems. They should be proactive and perceiving problems that are ahead to the best of their ability. No one saw COVID coming, etc. But you could have had a crisis plan in place or something like that. So you've got a person who is good at forecasting problems to the best of their ability. This is a person who is good at releasing authority while maintaining responsibility, which is how we define empowerment at the Malthus Group. So what does that mean? What does that look like? It means I trust people to do things within their realm of responsibility, of ownership. But when those things don't go well, I take responsibility for how it happened. I don't just dissociate from it and go, oh man, yeah, they did a terrible job. No, I take ownership and go, that's on me that they didn't really thrive in that. So they're good at letting things go. What I see a lot in staff, unfortunately, is the incentive structure, AJ, is around how busy you look. And so we get really people who are really good high performers. They get a lot of things done. They spin their wheels, but they don't really make progress, and they never escape that Sunday to Sunday hamster wheel because the incentive structure is around how busy they look rather than how many leaders did I develop? What problems did I solve? What are my plans for the future? How am I managing my resources? How am I building up my pipeline of leaders, etc.? And so long as the incentive structures are for staff to look busy, staff people are going to just continue to look busy.
Yeah.
And if you are hearing me describe that, and this is the hardest thing that I have to say, AJ, to people who would be listening to this and in the work I do with churches one-on-one. If you look at your staff and you go, they're not really a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
They're a really good musician, but they're not really a leader. They're probably not someone who should be on your staff. I'm not telling you to go fire anybody, but I am telling you when these positions open up, this is what you should be thinking. I would take a B- musician who is an A+ leader over an A+ musician who is like a B- leader, because an A+ leader is going to surround himself or herself with people who are really good, and they're going to make them better. But an A+ musician who is a B- leader is never going to be particularly effective in the ministry because it's always going to be about them and how good they sound. And so hire for leadership, not for highly specialized skill. For most churches, I mean, when you start talking about like super duper mega church, 15,000 people, and you just have money coming out your ears, maybe you can hire for specialization. But if that's not you, what you need to hear is when we hire staff, we hire for leadership skill because that's going to have downline implications for the team.
Yeah. Yep. That's good. These details matter for sure. All right. Let's move into top level leadership. Level 5, we're at the organizational level. We're talking senior pastor, talking elders, church council, whatever you might want to call it. Your top level decision makers. perceiving vision from God, maintaining authority over the church, protection of doctrine, this level of decision making.
Yeah.
Vision is a key element up at this level. We've got noted on here culture, right, Scott? Top level down culture is a big thing we could do, and we have talked about culture previously, but developing leaders. These people are going to be skilled at that. So we mentioned this earlier, pointed out again. Not everybody rises through the ranks and then becomes this level of leadership. It's just not the case. Obviously, there's the fewest number of people at this level of leadership. So you cannot naturally expect that, oh, I've made it to level 3 and pretty soon I'll be the senior pastor. No, that's not how it's going to work.
Right.
But some people will. Some people will. This is the way God has wired them, and that's the place that He has set up for them to serve in the church.
Yeah, that's right. So we care about the function more than we care about the title. So we most closely align this with what we see in Scripture around the term episkopos, which is sometimes translated as bishop, or translated as elder. There's also the term presbyteros, which is only ever translated as elder. The episkopos word can also be translated as overseer. I don't care what you call it. The fact that we have one word, actually, the fact that we have two words in Greek that kind of generally describe the same kind of person generally, and that we have the same word, the episkopos word, get translated multiple ways, is an indicator to us that the term you use matters less than the function. So whatever you call it, church council, elder, leadership team, I don't care. Your church needs oversight, and it is always in the plural. You can't point to any instance in the New Testament, at least, where you go, there's just one person in this role. No, there's always multiples. And so if your church might be built, well, we just have a senior pastor, and the senior pastor functions as the singular level 5 leader. We would just say that's not healthy. It's not healthy for, just like Jethro said to Moses, this isn't good for you to be alone up here at the top. So it should be a plurality of leaders. You can have a first among equals. Pastor can be a first among equals. That'd be fine. But there should be a plurality of leadership. This is a lay leadership level that might include the senior pastor, maybe one other staff person who might, like an executive pastor, or might serve at this level as well. And the pastor is usually overseeing the level 5 leaders. all the level 4 leaders in a direct report situation, but the staff is ultimately accountable to the board as a whole. So from a structural component, or from a practical component, I should say, you don't want a situation where if I'm on staff at a church, I now have 6 bosses. That's not good. I report to the pastor, but I'm accountable to the elders.
Yeah.
So
that's an important distinction, though, in both directions, because it's unhealthy also for the elders to feel like the staff reports to them, and you got multiple people then out giving direction without coordination, and people don't know who exactly is my boss, who do I report to.
Right. If Elder Bob says something to me in the hallway, is that a directive? Like, I have to act on that? Or is that just, shooting the breeze and just something he said in passing? How am I supposed to interpret that?
Right. Because what if Elder Larry comes by and says something slightly different or very different? So,
right.
Yeah.
So on a practical level, you report to the pastor, but you're accountable to the elders. But the positive end of that would be, or ought to be, there's a layer of assistance to the staff. So, for example, God forbid, but if there's a toxic situation with the pastor, something happens, any person on staff should be able or feel able to go to an elder and say, hey, this thing is happening on the staff, or this thing happened to me, or this thing is happening with the pastor, and not have a fear of, retaliation, that you can honestly and forthrightly address issues. So you can appeal to the elders, and advocate for yourself in a situation that might be challenging. I know life is complicated and that doesn't always happen. Sometimes there is retaliation for those kinds of things, but in an ideal situation, staff
Yeah.
should be able to appeal to elders as advocates for them and knowing that they're on their team. But from a functional perspective, their oversight generally comes directly from the pastor.
Yeah. All right. Uh, should we briefly mention in larger churches when
I don't want to get into
maybe
the mechanics of the details, because if you're this large, you should just contact us and we'll help you. But yeah, just as a side note, when we're going from 5 levels to 6 levels, it's because your church is probably 1,000 people plus, and your staff is too large to be managed at just one level. You need variation in the levels within the staff.
right.
So without getting too far into the weeds, that's the
We're
easiest way to.
talking 4, 5, 6, nothing happening 3, 2, 1. Yeah.
That's right. So yeah, your volunteer levels 1, 2, and 3 always stay the same. It doesn't matter how big your church is, and that top level is always the top level. What changes is what's kind of there in the staff.
Dividing up 4 or 5. Yeah. Yep. All right, man, this was a lot of information,
It's
a
a
lot
ton
of
of
details.
information. That's a lot.
Refer to, yeah,
If
refer.
your brain is swimming as you're listening to this is why we have a leadership pipeline service, is you can say, all right, will you please come and walk our church through this? And not only will we talk to you about it, we'll help you map out all of your teams.
Yeah, yeah. This is I know this is one though that we'll be getting the emails on that are like, wow, that was really helpful. I don't know if that's, prideful to say coming from the co-host, but sometimes we present information that is super practical. And I think if you go over to malfersgroup.com/242 for this week's article, it really clearly talks about these pieces. It'll be easier to digest. You can go through there and look again at what the examples that we talked about and some of the key aspects of each level of leadership. So you're definitely going to want to do that to take this in fully.
Yep. Yep. And like I said, we're here to lead your church through this process. So you can tell from this episode alone, we want to help you. We're giving away tons of information here just in the podcast. But if you're like, man, it would really be easier to have a guide take my church and help explain this to my team, that's what we're here to do. So you can get more information on the website about that.
You sure can. malfersgroup.com/242. And of course, malfersgroup.com/Gideon. You've been getting the emails about this initiative. More information there about our major funding initiative to make sure that we can cover all of the expenses that we need to be able to run this ministry in the United States and around the world with all of the projects we have. We would love to talk to you more about that if you so desire.
Can I say one thing about that before we?
You sure can, Scott.
Just want to say one thing that I think we've mentioned this before, but I want to reinforce it. A fully funded ministry means that we can also serve more churches domestically that don't have the ability to afford. Our rates are reasonable. They're more reasonable than pretty much anyone else, apart from a denomination that's given stuff away for free because they can. Independent ministries, our rates are as affordable as they come.
Yeah.
But we would love to help any church, even if they can't afford it. So, but we can't do that because we need those fees in order to keep the lights on. So, but a fully funded Operation Gideon means we'll be able to serve churches that can't pay.
Yeah.
So don't want you to think that this is just serving our international ministry. It does that. It meets every one of those requests as well, but it also means we'd be able to help more domestically.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. This isn't rocket science. If we all contribute a little bit, if a lot of people contribute a little bit, a lot of people get a lot of help.
Yep.
So yeah, we hope you'll take that to heart, and maybe talk with your missions team about that, and then call us. Let's talk about it too. Thanks for being with us, everybody. We'll be back again with a little bit more leadership for you next week.
Not a series. See you next week.